Well, if you've ever been to a potluck supper or you've ever been to a smorgasbord, you know there's a lot of different kinds of foods that come before you. And I guess that's what this show is going to be today. And all I know is this is episode 35.
Welcome to the show.
Well, welcome to the show today. My name is Will Sinclair. And you're listening to The Real Truth About You. And you can go to therealtruthaboutyou.com to get more messages, download more episodes. I want to say hi to possibly the YouTube community. I'm recording this show today, the very first one ever. Yeah, so today we just have a whole smorgasbord of different things that we're going to talk about today. Just change the music a little bit. Anyway, if you can just see my desk right now, I got like a whole schwack of papers and books and a whole bunch of different things. I actually just got a new microphone for podcasting. Somebody so very generously donated money to help me build a podcasting studio with more professional equipment. I've been using good equipment up until now, and they donated some money, and I really appreciate that. I feel really blessed, and other people are going to be able to use it too. So I'm looking at the notes I have in front of me. And one of the notes is about surrender. And it's about how we tend to want to be in control all the time. And it's just part of our ego-driven self that we want to write our own path. And the way culture kind of talks to us and the way the world talks to us is that, you know, make your own path and be the master of yourself. And number one is number one, which is you. But that is the path of destruction. Got to be honest with you about that one. That's kind of like a path of destruction for finding who you really are inside, your true worth, your true self-worth. Because you'll always want to, I think Richard Rohr said that if you allow your ego to define you, to give you a reference point, I have it written here somewhere. If you allow, what he says? Oh, he says, yeah, if we try to change our ego with the help of our ego, we only have a better disguised ego. And so when you get your own self to define who you are, then you have a reference point that sways with the wind and bounces up like a ball in the ocean and goes all over the place. So you need something more solid, and to be honest with you, you need a divine reference source. I call it God. You might call it the inner guru. You might call it divine energy of the universe. People call it various things, but I call this God. And that's just who I am. And that's my Judeo-Christian Catholic background. And I tend to bring that language to this podcast too, but that doesn't mean to say that it's the language of choice. It is my language, and you might have different language, but the one thing I've found, especially through Richard Rohr, is if there's a common truth, if something is true, then it's true no matter what, no matter where. So whether you're a Hindu, a Buddhist, a Jehovah's Witness, a Catholic, or whoever you are, if there's a truth, it's a truth. And one of the truths I would say is like a very common physical plain truth would be air. Air is something we need to breathe. We cannot survive without air. And that is a common truth. And it's true everywhere. I mean, have you ever tried to breathe underground with no air, with no tanks or anything like that? And so that's a common truth. And one of the other common truths I've found is about independence. We are taught about being independent, but the truth is we need to be interdependent with each other. we raise our kids to be independent a lot of the times, that we are taught, and then we pass that on, that kids should grow up and be able to get their own home, their own car, their own vehicle, have their own career that they've chosen, and just so many things about them that they have picked. And they've become very independent. We say they've become independent of us. And in some degree, that is a good thing, where they're on their own 2 feet. And we certainly need to be on our own 2 feet. But when you look, if you look at Stephen Covey, Dr. Stephen Covey, who's now passed on, he had one of the most famous books in the world called The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, and millions of books sold. And anyway, he talks in there about that we're not meant to be independent, but we're meant to be interdependent. And one of the things we notice is like air. We need air to survive. We cannot be independent of air, right? And so our interdependency, where it's like we work together, is that we keep our air clean. We try to keep our air clean and pollution free, and so that it's breathable for us, right? And that's our giving back to ourselves and and to the nature, right? Because we need that, right? We're not independent from nature. We need photosynthesis from the plants, and photosynthesis is when a plant converts light, which is sunlight, into basically oxygen through the process of photosynthesis. And we need that oxygen to breathe with, right? And so we need to foster the environment for this to continue, right? Independence, that's interdependence. Independence basically says that you're a standalone. You can do it on your own. You can do everything by yourself. And that's a lot of the ways the world wants us to be, is independent, right? Yet, we need to be interdependent in each other. We need each other. And we get to a point in our life where we realize we cannot do it on our own. We just cannot discover on this journey, we just can't discover our true selves on our own. And I want to talk to you about someone that we just met with, and she has had such a tough time in life, and she knows she needed help, right? And she tried so hard to do it on her own. She tried so hard to solve issues on her own, and she had so many issues in her life that she had to deal with. And you kind of know what it's like, because you've probably been there to some degree. And anyway, she came to me and a friend, and we sat and we prayed with her. And I'm talking about prayer as in we just sat and we allowed our divine to penetrate and to be, right? And bring everything into the moment. And this was a moment that she really struggled with. She found it really hard to even breathe deeply, in meditation, to come into that present moment. She found that very difficult. And remember, she's gone through her life where she's tried to do it on her own. She's tried to analyze, to figure out things, right? And it's really difficult when you do that. It's because you're living on the surface. When you're trying to analyze, when you're trying to figure things out in your mind as to why you are the way you are, right? It's really a difficult thing to do. It's really difficult to really analyze and figure out who you are, because a lot of it you just can't. You just cannot do that. You need your divine to tell you, right? To clear you. And this is what she needed. She could not do it by herself. And I saw in her someone who was, I was like slipping into a ditch, and the mud is all wet, and she's clamoring to try and get out, and she wants help, but she just can't seem to get it. Just can't seem to get that help. And no matter how many lifelines she's thrown, nothing was working. Nothing was working, and she was falling deeper and deeper into this ditch. But the beauty of the whole thing is she realized that she'd come to a point in her life where she couldn't do it herself anymore. Even though she tried to control things in her life, she tried to write her own script for life. And it's really difficult to discover your true calling, your true life's calling, and your true self, who you are, when you're rewriting the script constantly. And that's what your ego will do for you. That's what living on the surface. And by that I mean, like, and I've come up with this analogy before of the ocean. And above the ocean you can have hurricanes and squalls. Oh, there's a hitting the microphone. Squalls and everything's, there's 100-foot waves, and everything above the ocean is like in confusion, in a state of like ruckus. But way down in the depths of the ocean, there's perfect calmness, and life continues. And like, you can't even tell what's on the surface, basically, right? It's really difficult to tell what's on the surface. And that's what it's like when you live in the depths with God, right? You cannot climb up to the depths. You have to go down into the depths to find God in your life. And God is already there, right? Your divine source is already in you, implanted, however you want to define it. Dr. Wayne Dyer says that God placed a spark in you when you were conceived, and that spark was him, right? Or it was God. I use that. There's that masculine, feminine thing of my language, but it's God. God is in you, right? And so when you live in that divine, when you live in the depths where you truly discover who you are, that's the peace. It doesn't matter what's going on the surface. I'm not saying you never go up to the surface, right? Or you never live up there sometimes, but most of the time you live in these depths, and whatever squall's going on around you, you have this peacefulness, this calmness that keeps you persistent and consistent in your life, keeps you at peace, keeps you connected. Because remember, you're not an independent individual. We are all connected to a bigger universe. We are connected to a whole. And the sooner we realize that, the sooner we stop trying to be independent. And anyway, so we sat with her, and I'm sure she'd be okay with me sharing the story, because I'm pretty sure she's going to come on the show at some point and talk about it. But we actually sat with her, and we allowed God to penetrate and speak. And God did, right? God showed us how, way back in her past, even her ancestral lives, right? There was healing that needed to be happening. And then God took that and healed her and brought her into that light. And I know this is something that was true, because there was 3 of us there, and we each separately got something that night afterwards, that we got together in the morning with this lady, and we compared what had happened, and it was all the same thing. 3 of us, basically with slight variations, got the same message and the same imagery and the same metaphors, right, about this lady's life and the past and things that happened, and how God had healed her. If she had stayed independent, if she had said to herself, no, I am in control of my own life, I will say what needs to be done, she'd still be floundering like a fish out of water. So we need to be dependent, interdependent on each other, right? The way we are with nature, we're interdependent. Okay, we cannot be a separate entity, or you will be lost. Independence will bring you back to the me experience, and not the divine experience. And when you're stuck with me, And I don't just mean me, right? As in my wife is stuck with me. But I mean, when you're in that me experience, you're stuck in the ego. You're stuck in the false self, right? And the false self is basically an imitation of the real thing. An imitation of the real thing. Of the real divine. The greatness and the goodness that is basically God. That is God. Would you not like to have what is good in your life? I know I would, you know. And so we need to not be dependent. Independent. Right? There's no such thing as independence. You cannot be independent. I know there's people who try to live in communities that are independent of everything else. But yet there's still some things they need to go and they need to get from other communities. They just cannot do it themselves. You can grow certain things yourself. You can do animals yourself, but you need to get the animals from somewhere, right? So don't be independent and don't follow that lie. Be interdependent. Okay? So, anyway, that's that message. We're going to move on